Hello guys, this is Jerry speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM React, episode number 552. And today I'm reacting to Purple Roads Podcast, episode number 36. Joshua Dela, Cruz, the host of Bruce, Cruz, and you. And react to this beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm Carrie Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour, and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show, Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carrie Stinson, and this is Purple Roads.
Wow.
Welcome to Purple Roads. I'm Carrie Stinson, and this is such an exciting episode we have today. We have Joshua Dela Cruz, the new host of Blues Clues and you. Joshua, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you, Carrie. How are you doing?
Oh, I am good, and this is it's very exciting to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm pumped.
Well, good.
Wow.
I am too, so this is perfect. I have heard a lot about you, and I'm just thrilled to have you on the show. I knew, obviously, Blues Clues when it came out, and I just think it's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
They've kept it going, and they've brought someone in with a lot of energy.
Wow.
Yeah. It was such a huge show in my life, especially because I watched it with my little sister. So there's that extra relationship with the show, and then it kind of got me in a strange way into singing because I thought that during the Mail Time song, Steve, the original host, was doing an impression of an opera singer. And so that's how I kind of started singing. And then it's not until later when I met him and started working with him, I found out that he was doing an impression of Grover from Sesame Street. And so what a turn of events. I was like, oh man, maybe I would have been a puppeteer had I known that. But yeah, it's amazing.
Well, there's so many places I want to go. So
Yeah.
before we got to Blues Clues, and obviously you're a singer, but you were doing, and make sure I get this right, but you were doing Aladdin.
Yeah. I was with Aladdin on Broadway for, oh gosh, 5 or almost 6 years at that point.
Wow.
I was with the show. It was my Broadway debut, and
Wow.
What a debut that is.
what a debut, exactly. It was incredible. We did the out of town trial in Toronto where we film now, and I remember thinking after we left Toronto, I was like, oh, I'd really love to go back up there and work again because I really enjoyed it. And
Wow.
now I get to do it again. I'm working in Toronto. We're not in Toronto right now, but when we start filming season 3, we'll be up there, and it's kind of come full circle. But I was with Aladdin for almost 5 to 6 years, and I started as an understudy. Then I picked up another understudy, and then I took over for Aladdin for a few months, which was incredible. And then I remember that I loved my job. I loved the people that I was working with, but there was still something in there that I couldn't quite put a finger on. That I wanted to do something more, and I loved photography. I love photography rather, and I remember thinking, oh, if I didn't become an actor, and I weren't married. Or at the time in a serious relationship, I think I most likely would have went into photojournalism. I think an insanely difficult field and easier said than done. And this is me in my dream world. But there was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to help people in some way, and I had acquired these skills training as an actor. And so I was like, well, how can I use that in because entertaining and being there with an audience has its own benefits, socially and personally. But I did want to go one more step further and help people.
Wow.
And when the audition for Blue's Clues came along, that's when I realized, oh, maybe this is the thing that you were looking for. And
Wow.
After every callback, it just became more and more apparent to me that this is the thing that you're looking for. And it's so funny because
Wow.
right before my last screen test, the Mr. Rogers documentary came out.
Wow.
And that was the show that I grew up with, and I was like, oh man, this is. It was like a Sunday morning matinee, so it was like 10:30 in the morning, back when you could still see movies in theaters with people, and we were all sitting in silence, and then the credits started rolling. There was a collective. And I remember the next day going into my audition and going to visit my wife, who was working for a Norwegian cruise line at the time, and I was like, I don't want to say it out loud, but I've never wanted a job more, and here I am. So it's strange how it's totally come full circle. First with Steve and singing, and then Toronto, and
wow.
Yeah. You know, I felt a connection to you, and now there's a huge connection. So I'm also a photographer.
Oh shoot!
And just it's one of my big passions of life. So
yeah,
I ended up talking photography forever because it's a passion of mine. I love Toronto. I was up there many times with Barney. We actually performed in the Sky Dome with Barney's Big Surprise. Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? A kid show in the Sky Dome.
It's gigantic.
Yeah, and we had Mr. McFeely and Francois Clemens, who played Officer Clemens, on this show for Mr. Rogers, and I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan. So
yeah,
wow,
connections here. I find it fascinating. It's one of the reasons why I started this show. Most people if not all of the people that have been on this show, didn't start out in kids entertainment, and then they got into it, following this calling, and they just fell in love with it. The audience of kids shows, they're just amazing. So what was it for you when you got in here and you started, being able to interact and react, and entertain kids?
Yeah, it's so funny because the more and more I talk to people, that is the path. There is something that's like scratching at them while they pursue their passion, and then we end up here. And now that I'm here, I think there are many things. I get the chance to play on green screen, which I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
I get to really stretch those muscles of imagination that I don't really, and that kind of playfulness that I don't really get to play, having done a show for 5 years, and even, doing side projects and doing classes, and you get to stretch, but it's still kind of within that wheelhouse. So getting to do that and work in a new medium, and I'm such a curious person, and production, especially film and television production, is fascinating to me. And I'm thankful that everyone up there is so gracious with their time and with their energy whenever I ask them, hey, what's that? What are you doing? Like, what's that?
Wow.
Amidst everything going on, amidst all the craziness of trying to produce a show, they put some time away to be able to explain something to me. And so there's that, and that's kind of the personal aspect of the job, and I love the people that I'm working with. I am in love with them, because again, they're all in it to help kids. From the top all the way down. It's so interesting because this show, while we are in the age of nostalgia and remakes and reboots and what have you, the show came back because, to go back a little bit, it was groundbreaking in 1996 because this was one of the first shows where everything was based in childhood developmental research, and then now we were talking and waiting for an answer from the audience.
Wow.
And so since its premiere in 96, in the midst of reboots and remakes, this came back not just because of the nostalgia factor. The nostalgia factor was a plus.
Wow.
But there's over 20 years of new research for how to help kids learn better and more effectively using television as the medium. and so it came back in such a noble way. And yes, there is that nostalgia factor, but on top of the nostalgia factor, the kids who watched the show growing up, most of them, or a lot of them now, are having kids of their own or have kids that are watching the show. So not only are we able to educate with what we're doing, but there's an entire emotional and relationship with the parent that's watching the show with the kid. They're sharing a piece of their childhood. And so what does that do to all the information that they're receiving from from the screen? And it's just really, really cool. And I think that is really rewarding for me to know that I get to play and I get to work the way that I've worked in different ways, but I get to exercise those muscles that I know how to use. And stretch them and strengthen them and explore them. But I'm also getting to do something that helps kids get ready for the rest of their lives and, hopefully strengthen the bond between the parent and the kid that are watching that the parent maybe watched earlier.
I think it's amazing and important what you all have done, which is there's a balance of the original show.
Yeah.
And then you've got some new stuff in there too, but it's not like thrown in your face, right? I think a lot of these shows, when they reboot, they basically only keep the name and they change everything else, and that's really not what you've done.
Yeah, and I think it was really important because if it's one of those things, if it isn't broken, don't fix it.
Exactly.
But again, there are things I like to describe it in a way, especially because of just resolution alone. Like we were in 4:3, now we're 16:9, and the high definition is crazy. Everything that we watch from when I grew up, it's like, oh wow, that was fuzzy. We were watching Seinfeld the other day, and we were like, oh, that's not in focus. I think they misfocused there. But again, they were also shooting on film, so I can't understand how they did that. But to go back to our show, like it's almost like putting on glasses for the first time, and then the animation that they're able to do just in the 2D, like the detail in the rug and the wall, and then Blue, now that she's 3D animated, it makes it crosses that 2D screen even further. So while I'm 3D, but when we're watching on screen I'm 2D, I am going through that fourth wall. So there is that three-dimensional aspect in energy. And now, because Blue is a CG and 3D animated, it's like we're coming. There's a stronger relationship between us and the kid at home, which is such an amazing way to take advantage of the technology that we have at our disposal, while still, like you said, maintaining that. Well, some characters are 2D because they're made out of crafts. So that, which is really, really cool and really smart. But even within the 2D animation, they're able to add a little bit of depth to really accentuate that, these things were made out of like construction paper or things out of your imagination that you can feel and that you have many sensory relationships with. So it's really, really cool. And again, the notebook. I mean, I carry a notebook and pen with me always. I've always done that. And now
why have you done that?
Oh, so I like to have a. I just want to make sure my Wi-Fi doesn't go off. Okay, there we go. I carry a pad and pen because I like the tactile response and to see, and the way that I've learned that I learn best is I have to take it apart, and I think that's why acting works so well for me. I see the words on the paper, and then I have to figure out the why, the how, and I have to like really make it my own, take it all apart, and then put it back together in my own interpretation. And so writing things down on a pad and paper is the same exact way, where I can just write something down, and now there's a physical relationship with the information that I have to remember. And it's just satisfying to cross things off too. I won't lie.
It's fascinating. I don't know if you know this, but that's what Fred Rogers used to do.
Yeah.
Really?
David Newell told me that, played Mr. McFeely, that he always kept one there, and that taught David Newell to do that. And so I think it's fascinating that you were doing it and you're doing it on your own. That's just what
Oh
we're
my
trying
gosh.
to do.
It's because I remember, I think when we started getting, when I got my first iPhone, I stopped doing it, and I started taking notes in the notepad, which is still useful if I don't have access to a notepad
Right.
or
Wow.
pen. But there is something different within the relationship of tapping and taking the time to write. It does take longer and it is sloppier,
Right.
especially with my handwriting. But it is, it helps me more. And I love that they kept that about the handy dandy notebook. Like, yes, we are in the 21st century and everything is digital, but
Yeah.
we're able to make it a handy dandy notebook phone.
Right.
So there is the smartphone, there is the touchscreen that so many kids have access to nowadays, and they need to have access to if they're have any sort of future in this digital world that we're creating. Like, technology is accelerating faster than our generation can keep up.
Wow.
So it would be irresponsible not to ignore that. But now, how can we turn that screen into a positive learning experience? We're able to do video calls, messages, we get emails, you can skidoo into apps, all the things that we can do with a phone, but in a positive way, while still maintaining the benefits of writing down and drawing and taking the time to visualize. I think that's what it is. When you take the time to write a word, you're also visualizing what that is and creating stronger bridges to whatever it is that you have to remember. It's
Well,
really fascinating.
Yeah,
Wow.
and don't you think it's important too? There's such an art to writing,
Yeah.
and we don't want to lose that. We definitely, I'm with you 100%. We want to go with the technology, but we also want to keep being able to communicate through writing.
Yeah.
Because my penmanship is horrible too. So I'm with you. I stopped caring about it for a long time ago. I just
Wow.
let it go.
Exactly. It's like, I'm the only one that's now that I think after I got out of high school and everything was typed, that's when I was like, oh, I can just kind of like let my belt out and just write however I want. It just has to make sense to me.
Right. Right. So I'm curious, when you took over this role, obviously what the other actor, what Steve did, you wanted to stay true to that, but obviously you want to put your spin on it.
Yeah.
So where did you go with that? Where did that, for you, especially for you growing up watching the show, where was that balance that you found to create something new but also to honor the past?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the answer comes from Steve and then later Joe when we met in person, because there was that hesitation and there was that fear and anxiety because it is such an important show.
Wow.
To myself and to generations and many other people.
Wow.
Across many other continents, which is crazy. So I never saw myself there to prepare myself. Like, okay, so how would I do this? I just did it.
Right.
It was an audition. Prepare. How would you do it? Just do it. And now that I got the job, and I had time between that moment and the first day on set, I was like, now all the BS started to come in. Like, okay, well, how are you going to do it differently? Like, all this stuff when you were just acting on instinct and your training. And it wasn't until we got into workshop sessions with Steve before getting ready for set. And he pulled me aside, like the first one, and he's like, "Hey, Josh, I don't know if anybody told you this. We were there early, but I just want to let you know that, and I wanted you to hear it, that we cast you because we love you and the things that you're bringing to the table. So don't ever feel like you have to do or replicate anything that I or Ano did in the past. Like, we love what you're bringing. We want you to celebrate you, and just wanted you to hear that." And Donovan Patton, who played his brother Joe, said the same thing to me when we met.
Wow.
And it was that kind of permission almost to be like, Josh, you know what to do. Like, oh gosh, yeah, line from the show. Yeah, like, you know what to do. Be yourself, and that is something that I definitely, and I still struggle with, because we're all a work in progress.
Right.
And every time that I think that I have a handle on who I am and my values and everything that I do, I realize that I'm wrong just because I feel like I'm done. We're never done.
Right.
And that we have to continue to understand each other and understand ourselves. And I think that was really, really important to hear, because everything about the show, the way you handle the workday, the way you handle interactions, and all the doubts that you get from this job, like I have such a great time because I'm constantly trying to figure things out. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, how did you feel? Because when you were working on Barney, like knowing that so many people have such a relationship with you and the character, did you ever feel like there was an opportunity to kind of like sit back and be like, oh, this is fine, I got this, or was it always like, you know, did you ever not coach? Were you ever relaxed into the job where you didn't really have to think about what you needed to do? It was, everything just came naturally. You were like in the moment, or did you feel stressed? Because I definitely felt like I was white knuckling the first few episodes, and it wasn't until maybe the back end of the season, and maybe after the 5th episode, where I was like, like, just be in the moment. You got this. It's fine.
Oh, sure I did. When I first started, you know, there was another actor that was doing the TV show at the time when I started doing tours. So yeah, there was absolutely, you know, Barney is Barney across the board. So we have to keep that character the same.
Yeah.
You know, as I went on, and when I took over the TV show, kind of like you, there was definitely nervous at the beginning. There was definitely that, but it got to the point where you always just stayed true to the kids. You know, I was so fortunate to tour for all those years, so I got the interaction with the kids, right? I knew that, you know, they knew all the dance steps and all those things. So I think I just got to a point where I just, you know, let Barney honor the kids, right? And as long as I was doing that and keeping him fun and you know, kind of carried us as peers. So as long as I was staying true to Barney and to the audience, I was good.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. I think once I stopped white knuckling, even after Steve had said that, even after Donovan had said that, there was still the new environment, the new work environment I'd been in. I always wanted to work in film and television, and then I finally got it, and definitely the imposter syndrome kicks in, and it's the just focus on the kid. I think you're absolutely right. I think once I really started having a relationship with whoever it was behind the lens, and it always changed. Sometimes it was most times it was my nephew. Sometimes it were friends' kids that I knew, and just waiting for their reaction and seeing, like, that's when things started to really get easy. Once I stopped thinking about myself and like, okay, I got to be true to the characters. Like, no, you don't have to be true to the character. You just got to be true to the kids. You got to help the kids. And yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I read somewhere that Steve had said 2 of the things about you were your authenticity and your imagination. And I think, you know, that's so dead on. With kids entertainment, if you're not authentic, it's just not gonna work, because they can see if you're faking or if you're cheesy or any of that. And then obviously, especially on your show where there's so much green screen, that imagination is really got to be something you lean on.
Yeah, it was exciting. It is exciting to work on green screen, but when you watch playback and you're not looking at something, forget about like believing that you're looking at something, but when your eye line is so off that you're like, oh, they're not gonna buy that at all. And the poor animators, they can only do so much. Wrong is wrong. And they're incredible because the animators are able to fix mistakes and things like that. So I'm so grateful to them, among many other talents that they have and what they do for our show. But Yeah, it's an amazing compliment, and I'm so thankful to you and to Steve. But I guess when I was growing up, I have two sisters, so I have an older sister and a younger sister. So I was often playing by myself, using my imagination that way. But as we grow older, like we stop using our imagination, especially when we get into
Well,
more professional work. There is an actual plant, whether it be a real tree or a fake tree, but
Right.
there are tangible
well,
things. We have costumes. But going to school, it was like a black box theater, so it was all imagination. So
wow.
we all technically know how to act on green screen. Um, we just needed a reminder. I remember one of the most jarring things getting on set for the first time was um, the silence.
Wow.
The other two, like, for some reason, I understood the only two things, the three things that I did for television and for film, they were they weren't on green screen, and so there was ambient noise everywhere. So we had to be quiet, but we could, we were still in the environment, so
Mm-hmm.
that felt natural. But coming off of Aladdin, where the audience is right there, and they'll let you know
Right.
that a joke has landed, or if they hated the joke. That's what I was coming off of. And those things that I did for TV, they were all dramas. So nobody was trying to crack a joke waiting for audience participation.
Wow.
So when I got on set, I remember not I remember that I didn't realize how quiet it actually was. Because we're in a studio, it's silent. And so I'd do a joke, and I remember being like, was that it? Was that funny? Nobody's
Wow.
laughing. This is so. I would turn after. Like, was that it? They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, that's convincing. But I had to tell myself, you know how to do this. You know what the timing is. So just trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is I have an amazing team that they'll give me notes. Give me great notes, so I can lean on them uh, to guide my performance along. But it really does make you trust yourself, and like if you're not authentic to yourself and you're not really authentic in the moment, it's not going to play to the kids at home, and they will call BS on you. I think
They will.
yeah, they most absolutely will. My favorite reaction whenever kids start to put together who I am in real life, whenever I see them, is the look of suspicion, because they'll look up at me, and then all of a sudden they'll be like,
Wow.
"What are you doing out here?" And then they're like, "Where's Blue?" I'm like, oh.
Do you get that all the time? Where's Blue?
Oh yeah, I get it all the time. And I feel so bad because I'm like, oh, she's back at home, and they're just as excited to see me. But I know that they'd be even more excited if they saw Blue, which I don't blame them. She's the best part of the show.
Wow.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I love Blue. I love Blue. What is the balance for you? What can you let go from worrying about the technical aspects? Being on green screen and having to look at these parts. Are you able, or are you able now, to just let the creative part go and just know that you have the technical side? And if you mess up, it's no big deal. You just do it again.
Yeah, I think it's that. Thankfully we get takes. It would be an entirely different story if we had oneers. We could only
Right.
do one take. But it's really my success in the effortlessness, or my ability to play on set, comes from how prepared my crew is. So the crew that I work with, the director to the PA to everyone, they make sure that I know where everything is, what everything
Wow.
is, and what the islands are. So we'll go through the scene, then we'll look at the storyboards, then they'll show me all the marks on the floor, whether they're pieces of tape, or if I'm fortunate enough, I'll get a tennis ball. Everything that I need in order to just kind of play.
Yeah.
I don't hit it every time.
None of us do.
Man.
I think my take record is like 28. I think that's
Man.
28 is the record, and every once in a while I'll be like, "What take was that?" They're like, "No, you're still good.
Man.
Still good. Nowhere near 28."
Man.
I don't remember my record, but I know it was up there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, because also, you know, you not only have to worry about the performance aspect of being Barney, but then what is your sight line like? Because I can't imagine hitting an X on the floor for lighting without being able to without having a mask on. What was that like?
You know, it's funny because we probably have this in common too. I always tell people I have superpowers, which is my senses. I really developed my senses, my eyesight, my ear, all of that. And I over the years got really good at being able to kind of hit a mark. And obviously, I was using all kinds of tricks to do that. But when you're doing the creative part right, there's definitely times I ran past my mark, or there's definitely a time that I tripped over, or I bumped a kid, or something of that nature. You can only focus so much on both, right? There's a point where you've got to make a decision. Okay, I'm going to do a jump here. Oh, that jump was too big. Or what?
Yes, yeah, because of the frame.
Right.
You're like,
Man!
you lost your head entirely, so we can't use it. Like, all right, take 28 it is.
Right. When you rehearsed this, you didn't jump that high, or whatever it may be. We didn't expect you to do that. Well, I didn't expect to do it either. So
yeah.
But I'm with you on the fact that when I started, I was afraid of that a little bit. Right. I was afraid to cost takes. I didn't want to be the one.
Yeah.
To cost takes. And then they kind of came to me and did kind of the same thing, because I had a crew like that too, who just loved the kids, and we were all in this together. And there was a time where they would help me. I had an amazing crew doing that too. Cameramen going.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Or they'll just hit the wheel and just go.
Exactly. So, but I think there is a point where you release this and go, you know what? You got this job. They want you here. You know what you're doing. Go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely takes an army, and that's something that I get a lot of credit, because I'm the only visible human, like 99% of the time. But the animation department, the crew that'll never be on camera, they are the army that makes it work. Theater is I always appreciated leads in musicals that I've worked on, where the lead actor was just a part of the cast. They didn't separate themselves as higher or more important, because the only reason the audience believes who they are on stage is because the rest of the cast gives them that power. And so any success that I have on screen making something look a certain way is because of that army that's giving me that power. They're in charge of making sure that animation is right in my eye line, and no matter how many times they told me just stay on that X, and I wander, if it can, it'll move. And so it takes an army, and a very supportive army at that. Like, I'm so glad that we both have that in common, because how much more difficult would this job be if we were working with a bunch of jerks?
It would be near impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
No one on my set, it sounds like your set as well, was just accepting a paycheck. Obviously, we all have to get paid, but their heart was there in everything they did, and it was incredible. It was incredible. So let's go back here for a moment. You're in your early days, learning singing and dancing. Where did all this come from?
It came from, so the singing came from two places. I'm Filipino, so there's a lot of karaoke in my life.
Wow.
Which is still funny, because now I've grown to despise karaoke, just because I'm like, oh, I don't want to, like, I'm an extroverted introvert. So I love performing, not so much for the attention, but for the expression.
Okay.
Wow.
But outside of that, it's very uncomfortable for me to be out there. Like when I was younger, I was very very shy, and I still am a shy person.
Wow.
And if you talk to my family once you got me started, good luck. But up until that point, um, so there was singing and there was karaoke, but I didn't really start singing until uh, Blues Clues came along, and I guess they all kind of technology came at the right time because at that point you could only do karaoke at a bar or something, right?
Right. Yeah.
As
Well,
a kid, you're not going to a bar.
Right.
So it was in the advent of I'm trying to video discs. It was either a DVD, video disc, and then so there was. Now you could have karaoke at home and DVDs at home, and there were like karaoke systems that my family would bring back from the Philippines, which they got by way of like Singapore or China or something like that. And at that same time, Blues Clues had happened, and like I had mentioned before, I thought Steve was doing an opera singer, and I was like, "Oh, that's fun! I like to sing my voice like this," and so that's what I would do, and that's how I fell in love with singing, and so that turned into
Yeah.
choir, into fast forward to my town, my school district. Once you got to 8th grade, um, you were lumped in with the high school. But you couldn't do any of the high school sports
Whoa.
because none of the other schools were like that. So you were just kind of sharing the building. So you
Wow.
could do the clubs, and my sister, my older sister, was like, "Okay, now that you're in the high school, you're going to audition for the musical." I'm like, "Oh, okay." You know, it's like it's a good way to get to know people. You get to, pad your resume for college. I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure."
And you weren't nervous about it? You just jumped in and did it?
It's like, yeah, I was definitely nervous for the audition. I was always nervous for the audition. Everything is, especially when you're a kid, everything is super important. And it's the biggest moment of your life.
Wow.
And
That's
but
true.
once I got there, it's so true.
Yeah.
I have nephews and friends and kids' friends, friends' kids, and whenever they're upset and their commitment to letting you know that they're upset is incredible. And it's because every moment is a super important moment in their life, and that continues into adulthood. But I feel like as a kid, that's everything. We can shrug things off more. It's like, I didn't get
Wow.
the job. That's fine. Next.
Right. It's
Let's-
intensified.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You know that, this is just how life is.
Right.
But you're learning that as a kid. So I was most definitely nervous about auditioning. But then once
Cool.
I was in the show, it was great. And I had no aspirations to become an actor at all. And it wasn't until my junior year of high school, we did a show that the director wrote. And the director later, he was an alumni. He was an alumnus. Is that what it is? An alumnus of our high school?
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
right? Did I use that?
I think
word
you're right.
He was an alumnus of the high school, and he came back while he was going to school at Montclair State University, New Jersey, to direct our musical.
Wow.
And he wrote, insanely talented guy. He wrote a show called The Bagel Factory,
Wow.
which I got the lead in that year. And because of that, I was able to get a scholarship to Paper Mill Playhouse. They have a summer musical
Wow.
conservatory.
Wow.
And from there, that's when I realized, oh, this is the first time I'd ever been around people that's what they wanted to do for a living. Kids. And I was like, oh, this is the thing you can do. And it was terrifying. But at the same time, I was like, I feel so comfortable around these people, and I think this is what I need to do. And then I told my parents, and they're like, okay. And they talked to my teachers, and like, Josh is a smart kid. Again, so much support and
Wow.
so much room to fail. I had the luxury of having room to fail, which a lot of people don't have.
It's absolutely so important. I've talked about this before with myself. My parents, when I told them I was going to be a purple dinosaur, they didn't know what the heck that meant, but they said go do it. So
Yeah.
so important. I'm glad you had that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be here without that room to fail. And
Wow.
then I went to Montclair State, where where my director went, and that director later went on to be a Tony nominated actor. His name is Rob McClure, and they just had opened Mrs. Doubtfire, as he was playing Mrs. Doubtfire when COVID happened, and they had
Wow.
to come down. But like again, I it was that kind of support. Like I had that passion and that room to fail from Rob as a director and teacher without ever he never pushed anything onto us. He always required us to work hard and to have pride in our work and to care about each other on stage. And the teachers and the producers of our high school musical, we always drove that home. Like if we had those things, there's no way that the show could be bad. Um,
Exactly.
and he was never like, you should be an actor. It was never a career thing. People would go to him and ask him a question about, hey, like, what's it like to go to school for theater? And so
Wow.
that's what I did after Paper Mill.
Wow.
And so that's how I auditioned for Montclair State University, and that's eventually where I went to school. And it was at the right time that I went there because I think the musical theater program was about 3 years old at that time, so it was still small enough that I could play any role that I wanted, as far as casting. And I was able to do a ton of shows and different roles that I would never be cast in the professional world, just because of the way that I looked and who I am. And again, given that room to fail and that room to explore, and I was able to get into the dance department there, where I first really started dancing. It was always dance was always around in my life, but my older sister, my little sister, they were the dancers, and they were amazing dancers, and that's how I was at least familiar with that. And they were
Wow.
the ones that gave me notes whenever they saw the shows, and I so valued them. And they would tease me in the brother sister way, but like they
Wow.
were it was incredibly helpful. And so that's where that respect for dance came from them. And then once I got into class, and I was like, oh man, what is this? This is amazing. I
Wow.
started to work hard in that because I loved it so much, and there was that part of my college career where I really loved concert dance, which I'd never known about, and I was able to explore that world. And by the time I graduated, been able to spread myself out and strengthen and stretch muscles. That by the time I graduated, I had all these skills that I had never dreamed of having when I first started college.
Wow.
But that's really how I started. It was like follow your passion, and follow advice, but also keep a clear head, and follow your gut. And what my teacher said to my parents that made them feel okay with the terrifying thing of my kid wants to be an actor.
Wow.
My parents are immigrants. They came from a third world country, and like the last thing I'm sure they wanted to hear was that I'm going to pick a life of probable poverty and hardship. And so the thing that my teacher said that really gave them a lot of hope and was that Josh is a smart kid.
Wow.
And if there's any time to try something, it's when he's young, because he can still recover, and there's time to make mistakes.
Wow.
And yeah, if it hadn't been for the support of my family and the support of my teachers along the way, and then after I graduated college, the support of my then girlfriend, now wife, like if I didn't have that room to make mistakes, I wouldn't be in this show at all, or I wouldn't
Wow.
even be in this business.
So I can just imagine what they all feel when you get this role. I can
Yeah.
just imagine. what it's been like for your family and friends and teachers and everything to see you go into this position.
Yeah, it's incredible because we watched the show growing up. We know what this show is and we know what this job is. And, you know, like to be a working actor, forget about fame. To be a working
Right.
actor is the dream. That's it.
Yeah.
That was my dream. And the fame aspect of it, those are like pipe dreams. They're like, yeah, that'd be nice, but it was never the goal. I never wanted to be famous, and I still don't want to be famous. I just want to continue to work and have a good time. But now to be able to do the show, being who I am, there was definitely an identity crisis in school, because, and then after I graduated from school, all that I wanted to be was ethnically ambiguous so that I could play these different roles. And it wasn't until I started to be around people that looked like me and other people that didn't look like me, that were so authentic in who they are, and they weren't trying to be ethnically ambiguous. They're like, no, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Latino,
Wow.
I'm Asian. I can't hide that. My dream role is to be Action or Arab from in the Jets and West Side Story, and I had the opportunity to audition for that in a serious production, and I remember being so prepared and learning all the choreography in the auditions and the callbacks and everything. I didn't end up getting it, but because I had that chance and I was so prepared and I felt like I killed it, I could let it go. I was like, wow, I never thought I would ever get that opportunity in my life. But
Wow.
that kind of authenticity didn't come through until I realized, like, Josh, you're Asian. Your
Wow.
problem, the problem of you not getting cast because this role is a certain way is not your fault. That is just the way that the industry is. That is the way that it was written because of the landscape of the industry. And I think once I started realizing, like, just be yourself, and what do you love, and explore that, like photography. If I didn't explore my love for photography, we wouldn't have the ability to shoot any of the extra content that we've been shooting in response to COVID for the show. Like I know lighting, I know how to work a camera and to record audio, and all because I was like, all right, let me just follow my passions. And I think that's one
Wow.
of the biggest pieces of advice that a castmate told a group, and I was like, oh yeah, that's an amazing piece of advice, is to cultivate your other interests and your other loves. Like, acting is the thing that you do and that you love, but it's not the only thing that you do and that you love. You don't have one favorite color. You have many favorite colors.
Wow.
So explore that, and I think that has a lot to do with everything. Why I'm here, or yeah.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. I came from we shot the show in Texas, so we were not part of typical industry, and I came for a very inclusive set.
Wow.
You know, several of the actors were little people, every race, everything, and it was never looked upon that way. It was always about the talent, right? It was always about the performers or the crew or all of that.
Wow.
And I'm so excited to see this happen.
Yeah.
Within the industry, because I can understand you being a Filipino and being able to represent that, how important that is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're just a talented actor, and you should have that position because you're a talented actor.
Yeah.
And I think when we get to that point and realize that, you know, diversity is so important, but if you're just hiring the best people, it's going to be diverse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because I get to be me, and the part wasn't written to be X or Y.
Right.
And during my final callback, it was 2 guys and 2 girls, and it was like,
Wow.
I was like, oh, cool. This is like, they had auditioned over 3,000 people for this role, which is like, they were really looking. And I think I remember what's really struck me my first callback, because it was with the producers, was that the only guy in the room was the camera op. And I remember being like, oh, this is different. Because every other audition that I've been in, there was only really one or two women in the room, and it was all a table of men.
Wow.
It was all men primarily, and it had been flipped, and I was like, oh, things are different, things are changing. The diversity is not just happening on screen, but it's starting to happen on the other side of the camera, which is so important to me, because that's the only way that things will get made. And it's not just, it just is. It's a beautiful thing.
Wow.
All of our producers were women. When we were shooting Barney, and this was back in, the beginning of 2000.
Yeah.
And we had producers in the 90s doing that, but I think because we weren't typical, we were Texan, we weren't union, we were kind of out doing our own thing and learning, and so it really was, about talent, and I don't think you weren't checking off, so it's fascinating.
I think that has a lot to do with the success of Barney and the success of Blue's Clues. And
Wow.
if we really want to go into like musical theater, the success of Hamilton, you have you have an insanely diverse cast on stage, but then you have a more diverse creative team that's making the show. So
Wow.
if anybody's ever felt like, oh yeah, Broadway feels kind of stagnant, it's kind of the same thing, it's like, look at the program and look at what the creative team looks and identifies as. It's the same. And once you start getting those like different stories from different perspectives, that's when you're really going to start to see change. But again, it's those people that are working on the outskirts of the norm
Wow.
that are changing the path, and that's just because they're surrounding themselves with good, talented people that they love, and it's really, really a hopeful. However scary or stressful today these times are, I do feel like it's because we're on the cusp of huge change, and which is making people entrenched and like doubling down, try to stop progress.
Well,
Wow.
right, and I hope people are realizing, from just the COVID aspect of this, that we need each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're against something we haven't been able to figure out, and then we're fighting with each other.
Still.
We need each other the most.
Yeah, and how amazing is it that like when we were all together, a lot of the time we would be on our devices and on our phones and connected to our devices, but disconnected from each other. And now that we're so connected to our devices and disconnected from physically being with each other, there's that realization. It's like, oh no, that was important. That is so important. Even when I'm at the gym, like,
Wow.
I need that extra energy from the person there. It's like, oh, they're working hard. Like, this is a place of work, as opposed to just kind of like being by yourself. Like, we're humans. We're social beings, social animals, and we need each other now more than ever.
No question. I got to know, before we finish up, I got to know what it was like during that episode and bringing Steve and bringing them in. I thought it was just such a brilliance to have you all together when you brought the show back.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you?
It was amazing because I got to, like, we're very close friends.
Wow.
Steve and Donovan and I, and it was like meeting your cousins. And now I think we've only met, we've only been in the room like a handful of times, but there is that bond, like we're brothers, and I'm so thankful to them for their support, and again their space to let me make mistakes, but because of Steve's costume, he wears green, and so he can't be on green screen, so he has to be on blue screen. So the way that they did it was they actually did a split screen of blue drape and our green screen. And because Steve and Donovan were talking to each other in the show and then talking to me, what they did was they filmed them together and they taped me separately. So I got the chance to watch, and that was when I was like terrified. And so I got to see them play and just be so relaxed and see them make mistakes and see them do takes and still be relaxed and still play. And that was the switch for me where I was like, oh, Josh, you know how to play. This is
Wow.
like, why are you white knuckling so hard? And that's when I started to realize, like, oh, I think we had shot 2 days already. We had already shot 2 days of just me, and I
Wow.
was like, oh wow, this is so helpful and so encouraging to me. And they are in real life the way that they are in the show. They're so supportive and they give you so much energy and care and yeah, never meet your heroes unless they're Steve Burns and Donovan Patton.
Wow.
I had my moment. I got to meet Carol Spinney, that played Big Bird for all those years. I worked with him,
Wow.
and I had my moments, and so I know exactly what you're talking
Especially in you have such a special relationship. While I watched Big Bird growing up, you were doing the same exact thing, and you both can understand what that job is. How can you connect to a kid on the other side of the screen through X amount of inches of fabric and in the dark? Like, that's such a specific job and
Still.
such a specific art that only you guys could understand what that is, and like how amazing that they weren't a jerk.
Well, yeah,
Oh, boy.
and I mean, I had been doing it for years, and I still was a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
I really meeting
Wow.
him was, you're trying to be cool, and you're trying to. Because you've been doing it a long time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't just get this job. I've been doing this for a long time, but it's Carol Spinney, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
he's
Legend.
such a gracious, such a wonderful man, which you see. I've never met anyone in this industry of children's entertainment that was a jerk. There probably is someone out there. I've never found them.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I learned I started when I was young. I was 23. Very quickly that there's a responsibility to being in this children's entertainment, and it's not just like I was just looking for a job, and then very quickly I saw the kids' reactions, and I went, oh
Wow.
this is something completely different, right? I can't be mad. I can't be sad. I can't be having a bad day. I got to find whatever I need to for energy and all of that. Because
Wow.
they didn't come to see sad Carrie. They came to see Barney.
Yeah.
And Barney's never
Wow.
sad. Where do you find your energy to bring that to the screen every show?
Yeah, that is such an amazing point, because I have found that acting is the thing that I love to do, but what makes it a job, like, you can be an actor and not get paid, and it's the same thing. What makes it a job is that you are paid to check your baggage at the door, which is challenging at times because you can't really check in, because either the audience will always suffer. They'll be like, well, that was bad, or your crew and cast could suffer because they could get injured because of you weren't paying attention or something like that. So I found that, like, the job of being an actor isn't a large part of the job is to check your baggage at the door.
Wow.
The crew helps a lot with that. I mean, it gets difficult because my wife last season and the season before was doing Jersey Boys, and so she could not be in Toronto. We couldn't be together, and that got definitely challenging just because I was homesick all the time. But the crew was a huge part about that success, and then again, having a relationship with that person on the other side of the glass, that was really, really helpful, and being in character. The thing that I did take some getting used to, and so I was used to that. Check your baggage at the door. I learned that early on, working. but what I found because of this specific job, because like my name is Josh in the show and my name is Josh in real life, is that like I can't, like
Wow.
you said, get mad or whatever, which is so difficult because you're a human being.
Right.
Yep.
And you do have to give yourself permission. Like, you know, you're not always going to be at your best. But what the wonderful thing about the responsibility of the show is, I am forced to confront those knee-jerk reactions. Like, my wife and I were living in New York City, and like that is like the town of knee-jerk reactions. Everyone's on top of each other. It's either super hot or super cold.
Wow.
And you know, people are just trying to get from point A to point B, and sometimes the interactions between are not the most neighborly. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, like, having this job really has made me think. I'm breathing a lot more. I'm being like, let it go. Is it worth it to be angry, or is it worth it to take this kind of resentment with you? No.
No.
You know, it just is what it is. And because of that responsibility, life has gotten so much easier, just in my demeanor. You know, whether it be dealing with a temper, or you know, we all get mad, we all get sad. I'm forced to process my emotions as opposed to just like go with it and then brush it to the side, which isn't helpful. So that, you know, that responsibility of the show has really come in handy with just my overall well-being as a person, and I'm so thankful for that. But it is we are works in progress, and you know, while I'll never be perfect, that doesn't mean that I can't work on it, and it's been better because of it.
Well, I can see why you've been so successful. Your wisdom is amazing.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
And obviously, yeah, I've learned a lot, and your passion for what you do, and congratulations. On
Thank
your
you.
success.
This has been so wonderful, especially because we do have that shared bond of working in children's television and working on important shows. Like Blue's Clues is important for me.
Yeah.
And, Barney is such an important show for my sister and for so many people, that you know, there is that bond of children's television, and the fact that, you know, we didn't get into this business like knowing that. We just kind of like, oh, I guess we're here.
Absolutely. My girlfriend and her kids were so excited when they're like, Blue's Clues, are you kidding me? I mean, they were just going crazy. So
Wow.
I think it's just very special what you've been able to continue, not only to continue with it, but to grow it. You know, I think it's so important what you've done in your new role.
Thank you. It's a team effort.
Hey, I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah.
But could you sing a little something for me to?
Yeah. What can I say? I can do. Thanks for doing your part. You sure are smart. You sure worked hard. When you use your mind, take a step at a time. You can do anything that you wanna do.
Thank you so much. How can you not smile at that? It's been a pleasure, Josh, to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you've done in children's television and for us, because it has been the foundation for everything that we stand on, and so makes my job so much easier to do because there were examples before.
Well, thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm very happy for you. I love seeing what's going on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching Purple Roads. Remember to keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your Purple Road. We'll see you next week.
So that was Purple Roads, episode 36. Josh Cruz of host of Blue's Clues and You. What do I think about this episode? It was amazing. So far, this episode went to be a success. And overall, Josh is like that, but that's just me. But anyways, guys, that was episode of React episode 552. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be Purple Roads, episode 37, Kevin Perjurer of Defaultland. But until next time, this is Lou Joe. Say goodbye. Peace out, baby. We get more to be out. Discuss space soon. Till then, LJPCBM out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. I ask, why me? Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.